almost as harshly as nynaeve. "And remember, different words." "Of course," Joya replied, as though responding to a gracious invitation, but her eyes glittered like chips of black glass. "You can see the obvious result. Rand al'Thor will be blamed for the depredations of Rand al'Thor. Even proof that they are not the same man may well be dismissed. After all, who can say what tricks the Dragon Reborn can play? Perhaps put himself in two places at once. Even the sort who have always rallied to a false dragon will hesitate in the face of the indiscriminate slaughter and worse laid at his feet. Those who do not shrink at such butchery will seek out the Rand al'Thor, who seems to revel in blood. The nations will unite as they did in the Aiel War." She gave Avienda an apologetic smile, incongruous beneath those merciless eyes. "I am, but no doubt much more quickly. Even the Dragon Reborn cannot stand against that, not forever. He will be crushed before the last battle even begins, by the very ones he was meant to save. The Dark One will break free, the day of tarmongaidon will come, and the shadow will cover the earth and remake the pattern for all time. That is Liandrin's plan." There was not a hint of satisfaction in her voice, but no horror either. It was a plausible story, more plausible than Amiko's tale of a few eavesdropped sentences, but Egwene believed Amiko and not Joya, perhaps because she wanted to. A vague threat in Tanchico was easier to face than this fully fleshed plan to turn every hand against Rand. No, she thought. No, she thought. Joya is lying. I am sure she is. Yet they could not afford to ignore either story, but they could not chase after both, not with any hope of success. The door banged open, and Moiraine strode in, with Elaine following. The daughter heir was frowning at the floor in front of her toes, lost in dark thoughts, but Moiraine, For once the Aes Sedai's serenity had vanished. Fury painted her face. Chapter 6. Doorways. Rand al'Thor, Moiraine told the heir in a low, tight voice, is a mule-headed, stone-willed fool of a man. Elaine lifted her chin angrily. Her childhood nurse, Linny, used to say you could weave silk from pig bristles before you could make a man anything but a man. But that was no excuse for Rand. We breed them that way in the Two Rivers. Nynaeve was suddenly all half-suppressed smiles and satisfaction. She seldom hid her dislike of the Aes Sedai half as well as she thought she did. Two Rivers women never have any trouble with them. From the startled look Egwene gave her, that was a lie, big enough to warrant having her mouth washed out. Moraine's brows drew down, as if she were about to reply to Nynaeve in harder kind. Elaine stirred, but she could not find anything to say that would head off argument. Rand kept dancing through her head. He had no right. But what right did she have? Egwene spoke instead. "What did he do, Moiraine?" The Aes Sedai's eyes swung to Egwene, a stare so hard that the younger woman stepped back and snapped her fan open, nervously fluttering it at her face. But Moiraine's gaze settled on Joya and Amiko, the one watching her warily, the other bound and unaware of anything but the far wall. Elaine gave a small start at realizing Joya was not bound. Hastily she checked the shield blocking the woman from the true source. She hoped none of the others had noticed her jump. Joya frightened her nearly to death, but Egwene and Nynaeve were no more scared of the woman than Moiraine was. Sometimes it was difficult, being as brave as the daughter heir of Andor should be. She often found herself wishing she could manage as well as those two. "The guards," Moiraine muttered as if to herself. "I saw them in the corridor still, and never thought." She smoothed her dress, composing herself with an obvious effort. Elaine did not believe she had ever seen Moiraine so out of herself as tonight. But then, the Aes Sedai had cause. No more than I do. Or do I? She found herself trying not to meet Egwene's eyes. Had it been Egwene or Nynaeve or Elaine who was off balance, Joya would surely have said something subtle and of two meanings, calculated to upset them a little more. If they had been alone, at least. With Moiraine, she only watched uneasily, silently. Moiraine walked the length of the table, her calm restored. Joya was nearly a head the taller, but had she also been dressed in silks, there would have been no doubt which was in command of the situation. Joya did not quite draw back, but her hands tightened on her skirts for a moment before she could master them. "I have made arrangements," Moiraine said quietly. In 4 days you will be taken upriver by ship to Tar Valon and the Tower. There they are not so gentle as we have been. If you have not found the truth so far, find it before you reach South Harbour, or you will assuredly go to the gallows in the Traitor's Court. I will not speak to you again unless you send word that you have something new to tell, and I do not want to hear a word from you, not one word, unless it is new. Believe me, it will save you pain in Tar Valon. Avienda, will you tell the captain to bring in 2 of his men?" Elaine blinked as the aiel woman unfolded herself and vanished through the doorway. Sometimes Avienda could be so still she seemed not to be there. Joya's face worked as if she wanted to speak, but Moiraine stared up at her, and finally the dark friend turned her eyes away. They glittered like a raven's, full of black murder, but she held her tongue. To Elaine's eyes, a golden-white glow suddenly surrounded Moiraine, the glow of a woman embracing cedar. Only another woman trained to channel could have seen it. The flows holding Emiko unravelled more quickly than Elaine could have managed. She was stronger than Moiraine, potentially at least. In the tower, the women teaching her had been almost unbelieving at her potential, and at egwene's and nynaeve's. Nynaeve was the strongest of them all when she could manage to channel. But Moiraine had the experience. What they were still learning to do, Moiraine could do half asleep. Yet there were some things Elaine could do, and the other 2 that the Aes Sedai could not. It was a small satisfaction in the face of how easily Moiraine cowed Joya. Freed, able to hear, Emiko turned and became aware of Moiraine for the first time. With a squeak, she dropped a curtsy as deep as any new novice. Joya was glaring at the door, avoiding anyone's gaze. Nynaeve, arms crossed and knuckles white from gripping her braid, was giving Moiraine a stare almost as murderous as Joya's. Egwene fingered her skirt and glowered at Joya. Elaine frowned, wishing she were as brave as Egwene, wishing she did not feel she was betraying her friend. Into that walked the captain with 2 more defenders in black and gold on his heels. Avienda was not with them. It seemed she had taken her opportunity to escape Aes Sedai. The grizzled officer, 2 short white plumes on his rimmed helmet, shied as his eyes met Joya's, though she did not even seem to see him. His gaze skittered from woman to woman uncertainly. The mood of the room was trouble, and a wise man did not want any part of trouble among this sort of women. The 2 soldiers clutched their tall spears to their sides, almost as if they feared they might have to defend themselves. Perhaps they did fear it. "You will take these 2 back to their cells," Moiraine told the officer curtly. "Repeat your instructions. I want no mistakes." "Yes, A." The captain's throat seemed to seize. He gulped a breath. "Yes, my lady," he said, watching her anxiously to see if that would do. When she only continued to look at him, waiting, he gave an audible sigh of relief. "The prisoners are to talk to no one except myself, not even each other. 20 men in the guardroom, and 2 outside each cell at all times, 4 if a cell door has to be opened for any reason. I myself will watch their food prepared and take it to them. All as you have commanded, my lady." A hint of question tinged his voice. 100 rumors floated through the stone concerning the prisoners, and why 2 women needed to be guarded so heavily. And there were whispered stories about the Aes Sedai, each darker than the last. "Very good," Moiraine said. "Take them." It was not clear who was more eager to leave the room, the prisoners or the guards. Even Joya stepped quickly, as if she could not bear keeping silent near Moiraine for another moment. Elaine was certain she had kept her face calm since entering the room, but egwene came to her, put an arm around her. "What is the matter, Elaine? You look about to cry." The concern in her voice made Elaine feel like bursting into tears. "Light," she thought. She thought, "I will not be that silly. I will not. A weeping woman is a bucket with no bottom." Linny had been full of sayings like that. 3 times. Nynaeve burst out at Moiraine. "Only 3. You have consented to help us question them. This time, you vanish before we begin, and now you calmly announce you are sending them off to Tar Valon. If you will not help, at least do not interfere." "Do not presume on the amyrlin's authority too far," Moiraine said coolly. "She may have set you to chase Liandrin, but you are still only accepted and woefully ignorant, whatever letters you carry. Or did you mean to keep questioning them forever before reaching a decision? You 2 Rivers people seem to work at avoiding decisions that must be made. Nynaeve opened and closed her mouth, eyes bulging, as if wondering which accusation to answer first, but Moiraine turned to Egwene and Elaine. "Pull yourself together, Elaine. How you can carry out the amyrlin's orders, if you think every land has the customs you were born to, I do not know. And I do not know why you are so upset. Do not let your feelings hurt others." "What do you mean?" Egwene said. "What customs? What are you talking about?" "Berelain was in Rand's chambers," Elaine said in a small voice, before she could stop herself. Her eyes flickered guiltily toward Egwene. Surely she had kept her own feelings hidden. Moiraine gave her a reproachful look and sighed. "I would have spared you this if I could, Egwene, if Elaine had not let her disgust with Berelain overcome her sense. The customs of Myriane are not those either of you were born to. Egwene, I know what you feel for Rand, but you must realize by now that nothing can come of it. He belongs to the pattern and to history." Seemingly ignoring the Aes Sedai, Egwene peered into Elaine's eyes. Elaine wanted to look away and could not. Suddenly Egwene leaned closer, whispering behind a cupped hand, "I love him, like a brother, and you, like a sister. I wish you well of him." Elaine's eyes widened, a smile spreading slowly across her face. She answered Egwene's hug with a fierce hug of her own. "Thank you," she murmured softly. "I love you too, sister." "Oh, thank you." "She got it wrong," Egwene said, half to herself, a delighted grin blooming on her face. "Have you ever been in love, Moiraine?" What a startling question. Elaine could not imagine the Aes Sedai in love. Moiraine was blue ajah, and it was said blue sisters gave all their passions to causes. The slender woman was not at all taken aback. For a long moment she looked levelly at the pair of them, each with an arm around the other. Finally she said, "I could wager I know the face of the man I will marry better than either of you knows that of your future husband." Egwene gaped in surprise. "Who?" Elaine gasped. The Aes Sedai appeared regretful of having spoken. "Perhaps I only meant we share in ignorance. Do not read too much into a few words." She looked at Nynaeve consideringly. "Should I ever choose a man, should I say, it will not be Lan. That much I will say." That was a sop to Nynaeve, but Nynaeve did not seem to like hearing it. Nynaeve had what Linny would have called a hard patch to hoe, loving not just a warder, but a man who tried to deny returning her love. Fool man that he was, he talked of the war against the shadow. He could not stop fighting, and could never win, of refusing to dress Nynaeve in widow's clothes for her wedding feast. Silly things of that sort. Elaine did not see how Nynaeve put up with it. She was not a very patient woman. "If you are finished chatting about men," Nynaeve said acidly, as though to prove just that, "perhaps we can go back to what is important." Gripping her braid hard, she picked up speed and force as she went along, like a water wheel with the gears disengaged. "How are we to decide whether Joya is lying or Emiko if you send them away? Or whether they both are? Or neither? I don't relish dithering here, Moiraine, no matter what you think, but I have walked into too many traps to want to walk into another. And I don't want to run after Jack-o'-the-Wisps either. Or I by E. We, as are the ones the amyrlin sent after Liandrin and her cronies. Since you don't seem to think they are important enough to spare more than a moment to help us, the least you can do is not crack our ankles with a broom." She seemed about to rip that braid free and try to strangle the Aes Sedai with it, and Moiraine wore a dangerously cool, crystalline calm that suggested she might be ready to teach again the lesson on holding her tongue that she had taught Joya. It was, Elaine decided, time for her to stop moping. She did not know how she had fallen into the role of peacemaker among these women. Sometimes she wanted to take them all by the scruff of the neck and shake them. But her mother always said no good decision was ever made in anger. "You might add to your list of what you want to know," she said. "Why were we summoned to Rand? That is where Kareen took us. He is all right now, of course." Moiraine healed him. She could not repress a shudder, thinking of her brief glimpse inside his chamber, but the diversion worked a charm. "Healed?" Nynaeve gasped. "What happened to him?" "He almost died," the Aes Sedai said, as calmly as if she were saying he had a pot of tea. Elaine felt Egwene tremble as they listened to Moiraine's dispassionate report, but perhaps some of the trembling was her own. Bubbles of evil drifting through the pattern, reflections leaping out of mirrors, round a mass of blood and wounds. Almost as an afterthought, Moiraine added that she was sure Perrin and Matt had experienced something of the same, but escaped unharmed. The woman must have ice instead of blood. No, she was heated enough about Rand's stubbornness. And she wasn't cold when she spoke of marrying, however much she pretended to be. But now she could have been discussing whether a bolt of silk was the right colour for a dress. And these things will keep on, Egwene said when Moiraine finished. Is there nothing you can do to stop it, or that Rand can do? The small blue stone dangling from Moiraine's hair swung as she shook her head. Not until he learns to control his abilities. Perhaps not then. I do not know if even he will be strong enough to push the miasma away from himself. At the least, though, he will be better able to defend himself. Can't you do something to help him? Nynaeve demanded. You are the one of us who is supposed to know everything, or pretends to. Can't you teach him? Some part of it, anyway. And don't quote proverbs about birds teaching fish to fly. You would know better, Moiraine replied, if you had taken the advantage of your studies that you should have. You should know better. You want to know how to use the power, Nynaeve, but you do not care to learn about the power. saidin is not saidar. The flows are different. The ways of weaving are different. The bird has a better chance. This time, Egwene took a turn at diffusing tension. What is Rand being stubborn about now? Nynaeve opened her mouth, and she added, He can be stubborn as a stone sometimes. Nynaeve shut her mouth with a snap. They all knew how true that was. Moiraine eyed them, considering. At times, Elaine was not sure how much the Aes Sedai trusted them, or anyone. He must move, the Aes Sedai said at last. Instead, he sits here, and the Tyrens already begin to lose their fear of him. He sits here, and the longer he sits doing nothing, the more the Forsaken will see his inaction as a sign of weakness. The pattern moves and flows, only the dead are still. He must act, or he will die. From a crossbow bolt in his back, or poison in his food, or the Forsaken banding together to rip his soul from his body. He must act or die. Elaine winced at each danger on her list. That they were real only made it worse. And you know what he must do, don't you? Nynaeve said tightly. You have this action planned. Moiraine nodded. Would you rather he go herring off alone once more? I dare not risk it. This time he might be dead, or worse, before I find him. That was true enough. Rand hardly knew what he was doing, and Elaine was sure Moiraine had no wish to lose the little guidance she still gave him. The little he allowed her to give. Will you share your plan for him with us? Egwene demanded. She was certainly not helping soothe the air now. Yes, do, Elaine said, surprising herself with a cool echo of Egwene's tone. Confrontation was not her way when it could be avoided. Her mother always said it was better to guide people than try to hammer them into line. If their manner irritated Moiraine, she gave no sign of it. As long as you understand that you must keep it to yourselves. A plan revealed is a plan doomed to fail. Yes, I see you do understand. Elaine certainly did. The plan was dangerous, and Moiraine was not sure it would work. Samael is in Ilian, the Aes Sedai went on. The Tyrens are always as ripe for war with Ilian as the other way around. They have been killing each other off and on for 1,000 years, and they speak of their chance for it as other men speak of the next feast day. I doubt even knowing of Samael's presence would change that, not with the dragon reborn to lead them. Tyr will follow Rand eagerly enough in that enterprise, and if he brings Samael down, he— Light! Nynaeve exclaimed. You not only want him to start a war, you want him to seek out one of the Forsaken. No wonder he is being stubborn. He is not a fool, for a man. He must face the Dark One in the end, Moiraine said calmly. Do you truly think he can avoid the Forsaken now? As for war, there are wars enough without him, and everyone worse than useless. Any war is useless, Elaine began, then faltered as comprehension suddenly filled her. Sadness and regret had to show on her face too, but certainly comprehension. Her mother had lectured her often on how a nation was led as well as how it was governed, two very different things, but both necessary. And sometimes things had to be done for both that were worse than unpleasant, although the price of not doing them was worse still. Moiraine gave her sympathetic look. It is not always pleasant, is it? Your mother began when you were just old enough to understand, I suppose, teaching you what you will need to rule after her. Moiraine had grown up in the royal palace in Caerhien, not destined to reign, but related to the ruling family, and no doubt overhearing the same lectures. Yet sometimes it seems ignorance would be better, to be a farm woman knowing nothing beyond the boundaries of her fields. More riddles? Nynaeve said contemptuously. War used to be something I heard about from peddlers, something far away that I didn't really understand. I know what it is now. Men killing men. Men behaving like animals, reduced to animals. Villages burned, farms and fields burned. Hunger, disease and death, for the innocent as the guilty. What makes this war of yours better, Moiraine? What makes it cleaner? Elaine? Moiraine said quietly. She shook her head. She did not want to be the one to explain this, but she was not sure even her mother sitting on the lion throne could have kept silent under Moiraine's compelling, dark-eyed stare. War will come, whether Rand begins it or not, she said reluctantly. Egwene stepped back a pace, staring at her in disbelief, no sharper than that on Nynaeve's face. The incredulity faded from both women as she continued. The Forsaken will not stand idly and wait. Samael cannot be the only one to have seized a nation's reins, just the lone one we know. They will come after Rand eventually, in their own persons perhaps, but certainly with whatever armies they command. And the nations that are free of the Forsaken, how many will cry glory to the dragon banner and follow him to Tarmongaidon, and how many will convince themselves the fall of the stone is a lie, and Rand only another false dragon who must be put down, a false dragon perhaps strong enough to threaten them if they do not move against him first. One way or another, war will come. She cut off sharply. There was more to it, but she could not, would not, tell them that part. Moiraine was not so reticent. Very good, she said, nodding, yet incomplete. The look she gave Elaine said she knew Elaine had left out what she had on purpose. Hands folded calmly at her waist, she addressed Nynaeve and Egwene. Nothing makes this war better or cleaner, except that it will cement the Tyrens to him, and the Illianers will end up following him just as the Tyrens do now. How could they not, once the dragon banner flies over Ilion? Just the news of his victory might decide the wars in Tarabon and Arad Doman in his favor. There are wars ended for you. In one stroke he will make himself so strong in terms of men and swords that only a coalition of every remaining nation from here to the Blight can defeat him. And with the same blow he shows the Forsaken that he is not a plump partridge on a limb for the netting. That will make them wary, and buy him time to learn to use his strength. He must move first, be the hammer, not the nail. The Aes Sedai grimaced slightly, a hint of her earlier anger marring her calm. He must move first. And what does he do? He reads himself into deeper trouble. Nynaeve looked shaken, as if she could see all the battles and death. Egwene's dark eyes were large with horrified understanding. Their faces made Elaine shiver. One had watched Rand grow up, the other had grown up with him, and now they saw him starting wars. Not the dragon reborn, but Rand Althor. Egwene struggled visibly, latching on to the smallest part, the most inconsequential of what Moiraine had said. How can reading put him in trouble? He has decided to find out for himself what the prophecies of the dragon say. Moraine's face remained cool and smooth, but suddenly she sounded almost as tired as Elaine felt. They may have been proscribed in Tyr, but the chief librarian had 9 different translations in a locked chest. Rand has them all now. I pointed out the verse that applies here, and he quoted it to me from an old Kandori translation. Power of the shadow made human flesh, wakened to turmoil, strife, and ruin. The reborn one, marked and bleeding, dances the sword in dreams and mist, chains the shadows worn to his will from the city, lost and forsaken, leads the spears to war once more, breaks the spears and makes them see truth long hidden in the ancient dream. She grimaced. It applies to this as well as it does to anything. Ilion, under Samael, is surely a forsaken city. Lead the Tyran spears to war, chain Samael, and he has fulfilled the verse. The ancient dream of the dragon reborn, but he will not see it. He even has a copy in the old tongue, as if he understood 2 words. He runs after shadows, and Samael, or Ravin, or Lanfear may have him by the throat before I can convince him of his mistake. He is desperate." Nynaeve's gentle tone was not for Moiraine, Elaine was sure, but for Rand. Desperate and trying to find his way. "So am I desperate," Moiraine said firmly. "I have dedicated my life to finding him, and I will not let him fail if I can prevent it. I am almost desperate enough to—" She broke off, pursing her lips. "Let it be enough that I will do what I must." "But it isn't enough," Egwene said sharply. "What is it you'll do? You have other matters to concern you," the Aes Sedai said. "The Black Ajah." "No!" Elaine's voice was knife-edged and commanding, her knuckles a hard white where she gripped her soft blue skirts. "You keep many secrets, Moiraine, but tell us this. What do you mean to do to him?" An image flashed in her mind of seizing Moiraine and shaking the truth out of her if need be. "Do to him? Nothing." "Oh, very well. There is no reason you should not know. You have seen what the Tyrens call the Great Holding." Oddly, for a people that feared the power so, the Tyrens held in the stone a collection of objects connected to the power, second only to that in the White Tower. Elaine, for one, thought it was because they had been forced to guard Kalandor so long, whether they wanted or not. Even the sword, that is not a sword, might seem less than what it was when it was one among many. But the Tyrens had never been able to make themselves display their prizes. The great holdings kept in a filthy series of crowded rooms buried even deeper than the dungeons. When Elaine had first seen them, the locks on the doors had long since rusted shut, where the doors had not simply collapsed from dry rot. "We spent an entire day down there," Nynaeve said, "to see if Liandrin and her friends took anything. I don't think they did. Everything was buried in dust and mould. It will take 10 riverboats to transport all of it to the tower. Perhaps they can make some sense of it there. I surely could not." The temptation to prod Moiraine was apparently too great to avoid, for she added, "You would know all this if you had given us a little more of your time." Moiraine took no notice. She seemed to be looking inward, examining her own thoughts, and she spoke almost to herself. "There is one particular ter'angreal in the holding, a thing like a redstone doorframe, subtly twisted to the eye. If I cannot make him reach some decision, I may have to step through." The small blue stone on her forehead trembled, sparkling. Apparently she was not eager to take that step. At the mention of tarmongaidon, Egwene instinctively touched the bodice of her dress. She had sewn a small pocket there herself to hide the stone ring it now held. That ring was a ter'angreal, powerful in its way if small, and Elaine was one of only 3 women who knew she had it. Moiraine was not one of the 3. They were strange things, ter'angreal, fragments of the age of legends like Angreal and sa'angreal, if more numerous. Ter'angreal used the one power instead of magnifying it. Each had apparently been made to do one thing and one thing alone, but though some were used now, no one was sure if those uses were anything like what they had been made for. The oath rod, on which a woman took the 3 oaths on being raised, Aes Sedai, was a ter'angreal that made those oaths a part of her flesh and bone. The last test a novice took on being raised to accept it was inside another ter'angreal that ferreted out her most heartfelt fears and made them seem real, or perhaps took her to a place where they were real. Odd things could happen with ter'angreal. Aes Sedai had been burned out or killed, or had simply vanished in studying them, and in using them. "I saw that doorway," Elaine said. "In the last room at the end of the hall. My lamp went out, and I fell 3 times before I made it to the door." A slight flush of embarrassment reddened her cheeks. "I was afraid to channel in there, even to relight the lamp. Much of it looks rubbish to me. I think the Tyrens simply grabbed anything that anyone hinted might be connected to the power. But I thought if I channeled, I might accidentally empower something that wasn't rubbish, and who knows what it might do." "And if you had stumbled in the dark and fallen through the twisted doorway," Moiraine said wryly. "That needs no channeling, only to step through. To what purpose?" Nynaeve asked, to gain answers. 3 answers, each true, about past, present or future. Elaine's first thought was for the children's tale, Billy Under the Hill, but only because of the 3 answers. A second thought came on its heels, and not to her alone. She spoke while Nynaeve and Egwene were still opening their mouths. "Moiraine, this solves our problem." We can ask whether Joya or Emiko is telling the truth. We can ask where Leandrin and the others are. The names of the black ajah still in the tower. We can ask what this thing is that is dangerous to Rand, Egwene put in, and Nynaeve added, "Why haven't you told us of this before? Why have you let us go on listening to the same tales day after day when we could have settled it all by now?" The Aes Sedai winced and threw up her hands. "You three rush in blindly, where Lan and 100 warders would tread warily. Why do you think I have not stepped through? Days ago I could have asked what Rand must do to survive and triumph, how he can defeat the Forsaken and the Dark One, how he can learn to control the power and hold off madness long enough to do what he must." She waited, hands on hips, while it sank in. None of them spoke. "There are rules," she went on, "and dangers. No one may step through more than once. Only once. You may ask 3 questions, but you must ask all 3 and hear the answers before you may leave. Frivolous questions are punished, it seems, but it also seems what may be serious, for one can be frivolous coming from another. Most importantly, questions touching the shadow have dire consequences. If you asked about the Black Ajah, you might be returned dead, or come out a gibbering madwoman if you came out at all. As for Rand, I'm not certain it is possible to ask a question about the dragon reborn that does not touch the shadow in some way. You see? Sometimes there are reasons for caution. How do you know all this? Nynaeve demanded. Planting fists on hips, she confronted the Aes Sedai. The High Lords surely never let Aes Sedai study anything in the holding. From the filth down there, none of it has seen sunlight in 100 years or more. More, I should think, Moiraine told her calmly. They ceased their collecting nearly 300 years gone. It was just before they stopped completely that they acquired this tarmongaidon. Up until then, it was the possession of the firsts of Moiraine, who used its answers to help keep Moiraine out of Tyr's grasp. And they allowed Aes Sedai to study it. In secret, of course. Moiraine has never dared anger Tyr too openly. If it was so important to Moiraine, Nynaeve said suspiciously, why is it here in the stone? Because firsts have made bad decisions as well as good in trying to keep Moiraine free of Tyr. 300 years ago, the High Lords were planning to build a fleet to follow Maiana's ships and find the oilfish shoals. Halvar, the then first, raised the price of Maiana lamp oil well above that of oil from Tyr's olives, and to further convince the High Lords that Maiana would always put its own interests behind those of Tyr, made them a gift of the Tyr Angral. He had already used it, so it was no further good to him, and he was almost as young as Berylane is now, apparently with a long reign ahead of him and many years of needing Tyrane goodwill. He was a fool, Elaine muttered. My mother would never make such a mistake. Perhaps not, Moiraine said. But then, Andor is not a small nation, cornered by a much larger and stronger. Halvar was a fool, as it turned out. The High Lords had him assassinated the very next year. But his foolishness does present me with an opportunity, if I need it. A dangerous one, yet better than none. Nynaeve muttered to herself, perhaps disappointed that the Aes Sedai had not tripped herself up. It leaves the rest of us right where we were. Egwene sighed, not knowing who is lying, or whether they both are. Question them again if you wish, Moiraine said. You have until they are put on the ship, though I very much doubt either will change her tale now. My advice is to concentrate on Tanchico. If Joya speaks truly, it will take Aes Sedai and warders to guard Mazrim Taim, not just the 3 of you. I sent a warning to the amyrlin by pigeon when I first heard Joya's story. In fact, I sent 3 pigeons to make sure one reaches the tower. So kind of you to keep us informed, Elaine murmured coolly. The woman did go her own way. Just because they were only pretending to be full, Aes Sedai was no reason for Moiraine to keep them in the dark. The amyrlin had sent them out to hunt the Black Ajah. Moiraine inclined her head briefly, as if accepting the thanks for real. You are welcome. Remember that you are the hounds the amyrlin set after the Black Ajah. Her slight smile at Elaine's start said she knew exactly what Elaine had been thinking. The decision on where to course must be yours. You have pointed that out to me as well, she added dryly. I trust it will prove an easier decision than mine. And I trust you will sleep well. What sleep is left before daybreak? A good night to you. That woman, Elaine muttered when the door had closed behind the Aes Sedai. Sometimes I could almost strangle her. She dropped into one of the chairs at the table and sat frowning at her hands in her lap. Nynaeve gave a grunt that might have been agreement as she went to a narrow table against the wall where silver goblets and spice jars stood next to two pitchers. One pitcher, full of wine, rested in a gleaming bowl of now mostly melted ice, brought all the way from the spine of the world, packed in chests of sawdust. Ice in the summer to chill a High Lord's drink. Elaine could barely imagine such a thing. "A cool drink before bed will do us all good," Nynaeve said, busying herself with wine and water and spices. Elaine lifted her head as Egwene took a seat next to her. "Did you mean what you said, Egwene?" "About Rand?" Egwene nodded, and Elaine sighed. "Do you remember what Min used to say, or her jokes about sharing him? I sometimes wondered if that was a viewing she did not tell us about. I thought she meant we both loved him, and she knew it. But you had the right to him, and I didn't know what to do. I still don't." "Egwene, he loves you. He will just have to be put straight," Egwene said firmly. "When I marry, it will be because I want to, not just because a man expects me to love him. I will be gentle with him, Elaine, but before I am done, he will know he is free, whether he wants to be or not. My mother says men are different from us. She says we want to be in love, but only with the one we want. A man needs to be in love, but he will love the first woman to tie a string to his heart." "That is all very well," Elaine said in a tight voice, "but Berelain was in his chambers." Egwene sniffed. Whatever she intends, Berelain won't keep her mind on one man long enough to make him love her. 2 days ago, she was casting eyes at Ruach. In 2 more, she'll be smiling at someone else. She's like Else Grinwell. You remember her? The novice who spent all her time out at the practice yards fluttering her eyelashes at the warders? She was not just fluttering her eyelashes in his bedchamber at this hour. She was wearing even less than usual, if that is possible. "Do you mean to let her have him, then?" "No!" Elaine said it very fiercely, and she meant it, but in the next breath she was full of despair. "Oh, Egwene, I do not know what to do. I love him. I want to marry him. Light. What will Mother say? I would rather spend a night in Joya's cell than listen to the lectures Mother will give me. Andoran nobles, even in royal families, married commoners often enough that it hardly occasioned comment, in Andor at least. But Rand was not exactly the usual run of commoner. Her mother was quite capable of actually sending Linny to drag her home by her ear. Morghese can hardly say much if Mat is to be believed," Egwene said comfortingly, "or even half believed. This Lord Gabriel, your mother, is mooning after hardly sounds the choice of a woman thinking with her head." "I am sure Mat exaggerated," Elaine replied primly. Her mother was too shrewd to make herself a fool over any man. If Lord Gabriel, she had never even heard of him before, Mat spoke his name. If this fellow dreamed he could gain power through Morghese, she would give him a rude awakening. Nynaeve brought 3 goblets of spiced wine to the table, beads of condensation running down their shining sides, and small green and gold woven straw mats to put them on, so the damp would not mar the table's polish. "So," she said, taking a chair, "you've discovered you are in love with Rand, Elaine, and Egwene has discovered she isn't." The 2 younger women gaped at her, one dark, the other fair, yet a near mirror image of astonishment. "I have eyes," Nynaeve said complacently, "and ears, when you don't take the trouble to whisper." She sipped at her wine, and her voice grew cold when she continued. "What do you mean to do about it? If that chit Berelain has her claws into him, it will not be easy to pry them loose. Are you sure you want to go to the effort? You know what he is. You know what lies ahead of him, even setting the prophecies aside. Madness. Death. How long does he have? A year? 2? Or will it begin before summer's end? He is a man who can channel." She bit off each word in tones of iron. "Remember what you were taught. Remember what he is." Elaine held her head high and met Nynaeve stare for stare. "It does not matter. It does not matter. Perhaps it should, but it doesn't. Perhaps I am being foolish. I do not care. I cannot change my heart to order, Nynaeve." Suddenly Nynaeve smiled. "I had to be sure," she said warmly. "You must be sure. It isn't easy loving any man, but loving this man will be harder yet." Her smile faded as she went on. "My first question still has to be answered. What do you mean to do about it? Berylin may look soft. She certainly makes men see her so, but I do not think she is. She will fight for what she wants. And she's the kind to hold hard to something she doesn't particularly want, just because someone else does want it. I would like to stuff her in a barrel, Egwene said, gripping her goblet as if it were the first's throat, and ship her back to Myraine, in the bottom of the hold. Nynaeve's braid swung as she shook her head. All very well, but try to offer advice that helps. If you cannot, keep silent and let her decide what she must do. Egwene stared at her, and she added, Rand is Elaine's to deal with now, not yours. You have stepped aside, remember. The remark should have made Elaine smile, but it did not. This was all supposed to be different, she sighed. I thought I would meet a man, learn to know him over months or years, and slowly I would come to realize I loved him. That is the way I always thought it would be. I hardly know Rand. I've talked with him no more than half a dozen times in the space of a year, but I knew I loved him 5 minutes after I first set eyes on him. Now that was foolish. Only it was true, and she did not care if it was foolish. She would tell her mother the same to her face, and Linny. Well, perhaps not to Linny. Linny had drastic ways of dealing with foolishness, and she seemed to think Elaine had not aged beyond 10. As matters stand, though, I don't even have the right to be angry with him. Or Berylin, but she was. I would like to slap his face till his ears ring for a year. I'd like to switch her all the way to the ship that takes her back to Myraine. Only she did not have the right, and that made it all the worse. Infuriatingly, a plaintive tone touched her voice. What can I do? He has never looked at me twice. In the Two Rivers, Egwene said slowly, if a woman wants a man to know she is interested in him, she puts flowers in his hair at bell time or Sunday, or she might embroider a feast day shirt for him any time, or make a point of asking him to dance and no one else. Elaine gave her an incredulous look, and she hastened to add, I am not suggesting you embroider a shirt, but there are ways to let him know how you feel. Mainers believe in speaking out. Elaine's voice held a brittle edge. Perhaps that is the best way. Just tell him right out. At least he'll know how I feel then. At least I'll have some right to. She snatched her spiced wine and tilted her head back, drinking. Speak out, like some minor hussy. Setting the empty goblet back on the small mat, she drew a deep breath and murmured, What will Mother say? What's more important, Nynaeve said gently, is what you will do when we have to leave here. Whether it's Tanshiko or the Tower or somewhere else, we will have to go. What will you do when you've just told him you love him and you must leave him behind? If he asks you to stay with him, if you want to, I will go. There was no hesitation in Elaine's reply, but a touch of asperity. The other woman should not have had to ask. If I must accept him being the dragon reborn, he must accept that I am what I am, that I have duties. I want to be Aes Sedai, Nynaeve. It isn't some idle amusement. Neither is the work we three have to do. Could you really think I would abandon you and Egwene? Egwene hurried to assure her that the thought had never crossed her mind. Nynaeve did the same, but slowly enough to give herself the lie. Elaine looked from one to the other of them. In truth, I feared you might tell me I was foolish, fretting over a thing like this when we have the black ajah to worry about. A slight flicker of Egwene's eyes said the thought had occurred to her, but Nynaeve said, Rand is not the only one who might die next year or next month. We might too. Times are not what they were, and we cannot be either. If you sit and wish for what you want, you may not see it this side of the grave. It was a chilling sort of reassurance, but Elaine nodded. She was not being silly. If only the black ajah could be settled so easily. She pressed her empty silver goblet to her forehead for the coolness. What were they to do? Chapter 7. Playing with fire. With the sun barely above the horizon the next morning, Egwene presented herself at the doors to Ram's chambers, followed by a foot-dragging Elaine. The daughter heir wore a long-sleeved dress of pale blue silk, cut in the Tyrene fashion and pulled low after some little discussion. A necklace of sapphires like a deep morning sky, and another strand woven into her red-gold curls showed up the blue of her eyes. Despite the damp warmth, Egwene wore a plain, deep red scarf, as large as a shawl, around her shoulders. Avienda had supplied the scarf, and the sapphires too. Surprisingly, the aiel woman had a tidy store of such things somehow. For all she had known they were there, Egwene gave a start when the aiel guards glided to their feet with startling suddenness. Elaine let out a small gasp, but quickly eyed them with that regal bearing she managed so well. It seemed to have no effect on these sun-dark men. The 6 were Cheyenne mental, stone dogs, and appeared relaxed for aiel, meaning they seemed to be looking everywhere, seemed ready to move in any direction. Egwene drew herself up in imitation of Elaine. She did wish she could do that as well as the daughter heir, and announced, "I, we, as, want to see how the Lord Dragon's wounds are." Her remark was plainly foolish if they knew much about healing, but that likelihood was small, few people did, and aiel probably less than most. She had not intended to give any reason for being there. It was enough that they thought her Aes Sedai. But when the aiel appeared almost to spring out of the black marble floor, it suddenly seemed a good idea. Not that they were making any move to stop Elaine and her, of course. But these men were all so tall, so stone-faced, and they carried those short spears and hornbows as if using them would be as natural as breathing, and as easy. With those light-coloured eyes regarding her so intently, it was all too easy to remember stories of black-veiled aiel without mercy or pity, of the Aiel War, and the men like these who had destroyed every army sent against them until the last, who had only turned back to the waste after fighting the allied nations to a standstill during 3 blood-soaked days and nights before Tar Valon itself. She very nearly embraced Cedar. Gaul, the Stone Dogs' leader, nodded, looking down at Elaine and her with a touch of respect. He was a handsome man, in a rugged way, a little older than Nynaeve, with eyes as green and clear as polished gems and long eyelashes, so dark they seemed to outline his eyes in black. They may be troubling him. "He is in a foul mood this morning." Gaul grinned, just a quick flash of white teeth, in understanding of a temper when wounded. "He has chased off a group of these high lords already, and threw one of them out himself." "What was his name?" Torian, another, even taller man, replied. He had an arrow nocked, the short, curved bow held almost casually. His grey eyes rested on the 2 women for an instant, then went back to searching among the anteroom's columns. "Torian," Gaul agreed. "I thought he would slide as far as those pretty carvings." He pointed a spear to the ring of stiff-standing defenders. "I am, but he came short by 3 paces. I lost a good Tyren hanging, all hawks in gold thread, to Mangin." The taller man gave a brief, contented smile. Egwene blinked at the image of Rand physically pitching a high lord across the floor. He had never been violent, far from it. How much had he changed? She had been too busy with Joyah and Amico, and he too busy with Moiraine or Lan or the High Lords, to do more than speak in passing, a few words about home here and there, about how the Beltane festival might have gone this year, and what Sunday would be like. It had all been so brief. How much had he changed? "We have to see him," Elaine said, a slight tremor in her voice. Gaul made a bow, grounding the point of one spear on the black marble. Of course, Aes Sedai. It was with some trepidation that Egwene entered Rand's chambers, and Elaine's face spoke volumes of the effort those few steps took. No evidence of last night's horror remained, unless it was the absence of mirrors. Lighter patches marked the wall panels where those hanging there had been taken away. Not that the room came anywhere near neatness. Books lay everywhere, on everything, some lying open as if abandoned in the middle of a page, and the bed was still unmade. The crimson draperies were pulled open on all the windows, facing westward toward the river that was Tyr's Heartvein, and Callandor sparkled like polished crystal on a huge gilded stand of surpassing gaudiness. Egwene thought the stand the ugliest thing she had ever seen decorating a room, until she glimpsed the silver wolves savaging a golden stag on the mantel above the fireplace. Scant breezes off the river kept the room surprisingly cool compared to the rest of the stone. Rand sat in his shirt-sleeves, sprawled in a chair with one leg over the arm and a leather-bound book propped against his knee. At the sound of their footsteps he snapped the book shut and dropped it among the others on the scroll-worked carpet, bounding to his feet, ready to fight. The scowl on his face faded as he took in who they were. For the first time in the stone, Egwene looked for changes in him and found them. How many months before then, since she had seen him last? Enough for his face to have grown harder, for the openness that had once been there to fade. He moved differently too, a little like Lan, a little like the aiel. With his height and his reddish hair, and eyes that seemed now blue, now grey as the light took them, he looked all too much like an aielman, too much for comfort. But had he changed inside? I thought you were someone else, he mumbled, sharing out embarrassed glances between them. That was the Rand she knew, even to the flush that rose in his cheeks every time he looked at her or Elaine, either one. Or some. People want things I can't give. Things I will not give. Suspicion grew on his face with shocking suddenness, and his tone hardened. What do you want? Did Moiraine send you? Are you supposed to convince me to do what she wants? Don't be a goose, Egwene said sharply before she thought. I do not want you to start a war, Elaine added in pleading tones. We came to help you if we can. That was one of their reasons, and the easiest to bring up. They had decided over breakfast. You know about her plans for and P began roughly, then made a sudden shift. Help me, cow. That is what Moiraine says. Egwene sternly folded her arms beneath her breasts, holding the scarf tight, in the way Nynaeve used to address the village council when she meant to have her way no matter how stubborn they were. It was too late to start over. The only thing was to go on as she had begun. I told you not to be a fool, Randall Thor. You may have Tyrenes bowing to your boots, but I remember when Nynaeve switched your bottom for letting Matt talk you into stealing a jar of apple brandy. Elaine kept her face carefully composed. Too carefully, it was plain to Egwene that she wanted to laugh out loud. Rand did not notice, of course. Men never did. He grinned at Egwene, close to laughing himself. We had just turned 13. She found us asleep behind your father's stable, and our heads hurt so much we didn't even feel her switch. That was not at all the way Egwene recalled it. Not like when you threw that bowl at her head. Remember? She'd dosed you with dogweed tea because you had been moping about for a week, and as soon as you tasted it, you hit her with her best bow. Light, did you squeal? When was that? 2 years ago, come this. We are not here to talk over old times, Egwene said, shifting the scarf irritably. It was thin wool, but still far too hot. Really, he did have the habit of remembering the most unfortunate things. He grinned as if he knew what she was thinking, and went on in better humour. You are here to help me, you say. With what? I don't suppose you know how to make a High Lord keep his word when I'm not staring over his shoulder, or how to stop unwanted dreams. I could surely use help with. Eyes darting to Elaine and back to her, he made another abrupt shift. What about the old tongue? Did you learn any of that in the White Tower? Without waiting for an answer, he began rooting through the volumes scattered across the carpet. There were more on the chairs, among the tumbled bedclothes. I have a copy here. Somewhere. Dot. Rand. Egwene raised her voice. Rand, I cannot read the old tongue. She shot a look at Elaine, warning her not to admit to any such knowledge. They had not come to translate the prophecies of the dragon for him. The sapphires in the daughter heir's hair swayed as she nodded agreement. We had other things to learn. He straightened from the books with a sigh. It was too much to hope. For a moment he seemed on the point of saying more, but stared at his boots. Egwene wondered how he managed to deal with the High Lords in all their arrogance if she and Elaine put him so out of countenance. We came to help you with channeling, she told him. With the power. What Moiraine claimed was supposed to be true. A woman could not teach a man to channel any more than she could teach him how to bear a child. Egwene was not so sure. She had felt something woven from Sadine once. Or rather, she had felt nothing, something blocking her own flows as surely as stone-dammed water. But she had learned as much outside the tower as within. Surely in her knowledge there was something she could teach him, some guidance she could offer. If we can, Elaine added. Suspicion flashed across his face again. It was unnerving how his mood changed so quickly. I have more chance of reading the old tongue than you do of. Are you sure this isn't Moiraine's doing? Did she send you here? Thinks she can convince me by some roundabout way, does she? Some twisty Aes Sedai plot. I'll not see the point of until I am mired in it. He grunted sourly and pulled a dark green coat from the floor behind one of the chairs, shrugging into it hastily. I agreed to meet some more of the High Lords this morning. If I don't keep an eye on them, they just find ways to get around what I want. They'll learn sooner or later. I rule Tyr now. Me, the dragon, reborn. I will teach them. You will have to excuse me. Egwene wanted to shake him. He ruled Tyr? Well, perhaps he did, it came to that, but she remembered a boy with a lamb nestled inside his coat, proud as a rooster, because he had driven off the wolf that tried to take it. He was a shepherd, not a king, and even if he had called to give himself heirs, it was no good to him that he did. She was about to tell him as much, but before she could, Elaine spoke up fiercely. No one sent us. No one. We came because we care for you. Perhaps it will not work, but you can try. If we care enough to try, you can try too. Is it so unimportant to you that you cannot spare us an hour? For you, life? He stopped buttoning up his coat, staring at the daughter heir so intently that for a moment Egwene thought he had forgotten she was there. With a shiver he pulled his eyes away. Glancing at Egwene, he shifted his feet and frowned at the floor. I will try, he muttered. It'll do no good, but I will. What do you want me to do? Egwene drew a deep breath. She had not thought convincing him would be this easy. He'd always been like a boulder buried in mud when he decided to dig his heels in, which he did far too often. Look at me, she said, embracing Cedar. She let the power fill her as completely as it ever had, more completely, accepting every drop she could hold. It was as if light suffused every particle of her, as if the light itself filled every cranny. Life seemed to burst inside her like fireworks. She had never before let this much in. It was a shock to realize she was not quivering. Surely she could not bear this glorious sweetness. She wanted to revel in it, to dance and sing, to simply lie back and let it roll through her, over her. She made herself speak. What do you see? What do you feel? Look at me, Rand. He lifted his head slowly, still frowning. I see you. What am I supposed to see? Are you touching the source? Egwene, Moiraine has channeled around me 100 times, and I never saw anything, except what she did. It doesn't work that way. Even I know that much. I am stronger than Moiraine, she told him firmly. She would be whimpering on the floor, or insensible, if she tried to hold as much as I hold now. It was true, though she had never before rated the Aes Sedai's ability so closely. It cried out to be used, this power pulsing through her stronger than heart-blood. With this much, she could do things Moiraine could not dream of doing. The wound in Rand's side that Moiraine could never heal completely. She did not know healing. It was considerably more complex than anything she had ever done. But she had watched Nynaeve heal, and perhaps with this great pool of the power filling her, she could see something of how that could be healed. Not to do it, of course, only to see. Carefully she spun out hair-fine flows of air and water and spirit, the powers used for healing, and felt for his old injury. One touch, and she recoiled, shivering, snatching back her weaving. Her stomach churned as if every meal she had ever eaten wanted to come up. It seemed that all the darkness in the world rested there in Rand's side, all the world's evil in a festering sore, only lightly covered by tender scar tissue. A thing like that would soak up. Healing flows like drops of water on dry sand. How could he bear the pain? Why was he not weeping? From first thought to action had taken only a moment. Shaken and desperately hiding it, she went on without a pause. You are as strong as I. I know it, you must be. Feel, Rand. What do you feel? Light, what can heal that? Can anything? I don't feel anything, he muttered, shifting his feet. Goosebumps. And no wonder. It's not that I don't trust you, Egwene, but I cannot help being nervous when a woman is channeling around me. I am sorry. She did not bother explaining to him the difference between channeling and merely embracing the true source. There was so much he did not know, even compared to her own scamped knowledge. He was a blind man trying to work a loom by touch, with no idea of colors or what the threads, or even the loom, looked like. With an effort she released Cedar, and it was an effort. Part of her wanted to cry at the loss. I'm not touching the source now, Rand. She stepped closer and peered up at him. Do you still feel goosebumps? No. But that's just because you told me. He gave an abrupt shrug of his shoulders. You see? I started thinking about it, and I have them again. Egwene smiled triumphantly. She did not need to look around at Elaine to confirm what she had already sensed, what they had agreed upon earlier for this point. You can sense a woman embracing the source, Rand. Elaine is doing just that right now. He squinted at the daughter heir. It doesn't matter what you see or don't see. You felt it. We have that much. Let's see what else we can find. Rand, embrace the source. Embrace set in. The words came out hoarsely. They had agreed on this too, she and Elaine. He was Rand, not a monster from the stories, and they had agreed on it, but still, asking a man to. Ch, ch, ch. The wonder was that she had gotten the words out at all. Do you see anything? She asked Elaine. Or feel anything? Rand still doled out glances between them, in between staring at the floor and sometimes blushing. Why was he so out of countenance? Studying him fixedly, the daughter heir shook her head. He could just be standing there for all I can tell. Are you sure he is doing anything? He can be stubborn, but he isn't foolish. At least, he isn't foolish most of the time. Well, stubborn or foolish or something else. I feel nothing at all. Egwene frowned at him. You said you would do as we asked, Rand. Are you? If you felt something, so should I, and I do not. She broke off with a stifled yelp. Something had pinched her bottom. Rand's lips twitched, clearly fighting a grin. That, she told him crisply, was not nice. He tried to keep his face innocent, but the grin slipped. You said you wanted to feel something, and I just thought... His sudden roar made Egwene jump. Clapping a hand to his left buttock, he hobbled in a pained circle. Blood and ashes, Egwene. There was no need to. He fell off into deeper, inaudible mutters. Egwene was just as glad she did not understand. She took the opportunity to flap the scarf for a little air and shared a small smile with Elaine. The glow faded around the daughter heir. They both came close to giggling as they rubbed themselves surreptitiously. That should chill him. About 100 for 1, Egwene estimated. Turning back to Rand, she put on her sternest face. I would have expected something like that from Matt. I thought you, at least, had grown up. We came here to help you if we can. Try to cooperate. Do something with the power, something that isn't childish. Perhaps we will be able to sense that. Hunched, he glared at them. Do something, he muttered. You had no call to, I'll limp for. You want me to do something. Suddenly she lifted into the air, and Elaine too. They stared at each other wide-eyed as they floated a pace above the carpet. There was nothing holding them, no flows Egwene could feel or see. Nothing. Her mouth tightened. He had no right to do this. No right at all. And it was time he learned it. The same sort of shield of spirit that cut Joya off from the source would stop him too. Aes Sedai used it on the rare men they found who could channel. She opened herself to Saidar, and her stomach sank. Saidar was there. She could feel its warmth and light, but between her and the true source stood something, nothing, an absence that shut her away from the source like a stone wall. She felt hollow inside until panic welled up to fill her. A man was channeling, and she was caught in it. He was Rand, of course, but dangling there like a basket, helpless. All she could think of was a man channeling and the taint on Sedin. She tried to shout at him, but all that came out was a croak. You want me to do something? Rand growled. A pair of small tables flexed their legs awkwardly, the wood creaking, and began to stumble about in a stiff parody of dance, gilt flaking off and falling. Do you like this? Fire flared up in the fireplace, filling the hearth from side to side, burning on stone bare of ashes. Or this? The tall stag and wolves above the fireplace began to soften and slump. Thin streams of gold and silver flowed out from the mass, fining down to shining threads, snaking, weaving themselves into a narrow sheet of metallic cloth. The length of glittering fabric hung in the air as it grew, its far end still linked to the slowly melting statuette on the stone mantel. Do something, Rand said. Do something. Do you have any idea what it is like to touch Sedin, to hold it? Do you? I can feel the madness waiting, seeping into me. Abruptly, the capering tables burst into flame like torches, dancing still, books spun into the air, pages fluttering, the mattress on the bed erupted, showering feathers across the room like snow. Feathers falling onto the burning tables filled the room with their sharp, sooty stink. For a moment Rand stared wildly at the blazing tables. Then whatever was holding, Egwene and Elaine vanished, along with the shield. Their heels thumped onto the carpet. In the same instant the flames went out, as if sucked into the wood they had been consuming. The blaze in the fireplace winked out as well, and the books fell to the floor in a worse jumble than before. The length of gold and silver cloth dropped, too, along with strands of rough melted metal, no longer liquid or even hot. Only 3 largish lumps, 2 silver and 1 gold, remained on the mantel, cold and unrecognizable. Egwene had staggered into Elaine as they landed. They clutched each other for support, but Egwene felt the other woman doing exactly what she was doing, embracing Cedar as quickly as she could. In moments she had a shield ready to throw around Rand if he even appeared to be channeling, but he stood stunned, staring at the charred tables with feathers still drifting down around him, flecking his coat. He did not seem to be a danger now, but the room was certainly a mess. She wove tiny flows of air to pull all the floating feathers together, and those already on the carpet as well. As an afterthought, she added those on his coat. The rest of it he could have the majhere straighten or see to himself. Rand flinched as the feathers floated past him to alight on the tattered ruins of the mattress. It did nothing for the smell, burned feathers and burned wood, but at least the room was neater, and the open windows and faint breezes were already lessening the stench. "The majhere may not want to give me another," he said with a strained laugh. "A mattress a day is probably more than she is willing to." Ch, ch. He avoided looking at her, or Elaine. "I'm sorry. I did not mean to." Ch, ch, ch. "Sometimes it runs wild. Sometimes there's nothing there when I reach for it, and sometimes it does things I don't." Ch, ch, ch. "I'm sorry. Perhaps you had better go." "I seem to say that a lot." He blushed again and cleared his throat. "I'm not touching the sauce, but maybe you had best go." "We're not done yet," Egwene said gently. More gently than she felt. She wanted to box his ears, the idea of picking her up like that, shielding her, and Elaine. But he was on the ragged edge. Of what, she did not know, and she did not want to find out, not now, not here. With so many exclaiming over their strength, everyone said she and Elaine would be among the strongest Aes Sedai, if not the strongest, in 1,000 years or more. She had assumed they were as strong as he. Near to it, at least. She had just been rudely disabused. Perhaps Nynaeve could come close, if she was angry enough, but Egwene knew she herself could never have done what he just had, split her flows that many ways, worked that many things at once. Working 2 flows at once was far more than twice as hard as working one of the same magnitude, and working 3 much more than twice again working 2. He had to have been weaving a dozen. He did not even look tired, yet exertion with the power took energy. She very much feared he could handle her and Elaine both like kittens. Kittens he might decide to drown if he went mad. But she would not, could not, just walk away. That would be the same as quitting, and she was not made that way. She meant to do what she had come there for, all of it, and he was not going to chase her off short of it. Not him or anything else. Elaine's blue eyes were filled with determination, and the moment Egwene fell silent, she added in a much firmer voice, "And we will not go until we are." "You said you would try." "You must try." "I did say that, didn't I?" he murmured after a time. "At least we can sit down." Not looking at the blackened tables or the band of metallic cloth lying crumpled on the carpet, he led them, limping slightly, to high back chairs near the windows. They had to move books from the red silk cushions in order to sit. Egwene's chair held Volume 12 of the Treasures of the Stone of Tyr, a dusty, wood-bound book entitled Travels in the Aiel Waste, with various observations on the savage inhabitants, and a thick, tattered leather volume called Dealings with the Territory of Moiraine, 500 to 750 of the New Era. Elaine had a bigger stack to move, but Rand hurriedly took them from her, along with those from his chair, and put them all on the floor, where the pile promptly fell over. Egwene laid hers neatly beside them. "What do you want me to do now?" He sat on the edge of his seat, hands on his knees. "I promise I won't do anything but what you asked this time." Egwene bit her tongue to keep from telling him that promise came a bit late. Perhaps she'd been a little vague in what she had asked for, but that was no excuse. Still, that was something to be dealt with another time. She realized she was thinking of him as just Rand again, but he looked as if he had just splashed mud on her best dress and was worried she would not believe it, an accident. Yet she had not let go of Cedar, and neither had Elaine. There was no need to be foolish. This time, she said, we just want you to talk. How do you embrace the source? Just tell us. Take it step by step, slowly. More like wrestling than embracing, he grunted. Step by step? Well, first I imagine a flame, and then I push everything into it. Hate, fear, nervousness. Everything. When they're all consumed, there's an emptiness, a void, inside my head. I'm in the middle of it, but I'm a part of whatever I am concentrating on, too. That sounds familiar, Egwene said. I've heard your father talk about a trick of concentration he uses to win the archery competitions. What he calls the flame and the void. Rand nodded, sadly it seemed. She thought he must be missing home and his father. Tam taught it to me first, and Lan uses it too with the sword. Celine, someone I met once, called it the oneness. A good many people seem to know about it, whatever they call it, but I found out for myself that when I was inside the void, I could feel Sedin, like a light just beyond the corner of my eye in the emptiness. There's nothing but me and that light. Emotion, even thought, is outside. I used to have to take it bit by bit, but it all comes at once now. Most of it does, anyway. Most of the time. Emptiness, Elaine said with a shiver. No emotion. That doesn't sound very much like what we do. Yes, it does, Egwene insisted eagerly. Rand, we just do it a little differently, that's all. I imagine myself to be a flower, a rosebud. Imagine it until I am the rosebud. That is like your void, in a way. The rosebud's petals open out to the light of Sadar, and I let it fill me, all light and warmth and life and wonder. I surrender to it, and by surrendering, I control it. That was the hardest part to learn, really, how to master Sadar by submitting, but it seems so natural now that I do not even think about it. That is the key to it, Rand. I am sure. You must learn to surrender. He was shaking his head vigorously. That's nothing like what I do, he protested. Let it fill me. I have to reach out and take hold of Sedin. Sometimes there's still nothing there when I do, nothing I can touch, but if I didn't reach for it, I could stand there forever and nothing would happen. It fills me all right once I take hold, but surrender to it? He raked his fingers through his hair. Egwene, if I surrendered, even for a minute, Sedin would consume me. It's like a river of molten metal, an ocean of fire, all the light of the sun gathered in one spot. I must fight it to make it do what I want, fight it to keep from being eaten up. He sighed. I know what you mean about life filling you, though, even with the taint turning my stomach. Colors are sharper, smells clearer. Everything is more real, somehow. I don't want to let go once I have it, even while it's trying to swallow me. But the rest. Ch. Face the facts, Egwene. The tower is right about this. Accept it for the truth, because it is. She shook her head. I will accept it when it is proved to me. She did not sound as sure as she wanted to, not as sure she had been. What he told sounded like some twisted half-reflection of what she did, similarities only emphasizing differences. Yet there were similarities. She would not give up. Can you tell the flows apart? Air, water, spirit, earth, fire? Sometimes, he said slowly. Not usually. I just take what I need to do what I want. Fumble for it mostly. It's very strange. Sometimes I need to do a thing, and I do it, but only afterward do I know what it was I did or how. It's almost like remembering something I'd forgotten, but I can remember how to do it again, most of the time. Yet you do remember how, she insisted. How did you set fire to those tables? She wanted to ask him how he had made them dance. She thought she saw a way with air and water. But she wanted to start with something simple. Lighting a candle and putting it out were things a novice could do. Rand's face took on a pained expression. I don't know. He sounded embarrassed. When I want fire, for a lamp or a fireplace, I just make it, but I do not know how. I don't really need to think to do things with fire. That almost stood to reason. Of the 5 powers, fire and earth had been strongest in men in the age of legends, and air and water in women. Spirit had been shared equally. Egwene hardly had to think to use air or water once she had learned to do a thing in the first place, but the thought did not further their purpose. This time it was Elaine who pressed him. Do you know how you extinguished them? You seemed to think, before they went out, that I do remember because I don't believe I have ever done it before. I took in the heat from the tables and spread it into the stone of the fireplace. A fireplace wouldn't even notice that much heat." Elaine gasped, unconsciously cradling her left arm for a moment, and Egwene winced in sympathy. She remembered when that arm had been a mass of blisters because the daughter heir had done what Rand had just described, and with just the lamp in her room. Sheriam had threatened to let the blisters heal by themselves. She had not done it, but she had threatened. It was one of the warnings novices were given: never draw heat in. A flame could be extinguished using air or water, but using fire to pull the heat away meant disaster with a flame of any size. It was not a matter of strength, so Sheriam had said. Heat once taken in could not be gotten rid of, not by the strongest woman ever to come out of the White Tower. Women had actually burst into flame themselves that way. Women had burst into flame. Egwene drew a ragged breath. "What's the matter?" Rand asked. "I think you just proved the difference to me." She sighed. "Oh, does that mean you're ready to give up?" "No." She tried to make her voice softer. She was not angry with him. Exactly. She was not sure who she was angry with. Maybe my teachers were right, but there has to be a way. Some way. Only I cannot think of one right now. "You tried," he said simply. "I thank you for that. It is not your fault. It did not work." "There must be a way," Egwene muttered, and Elaine murmured, "We will find it." "We will. Of course you will," he said with a forced cheerfulness. "But not today." He hesitated. "I suppose you'll be going then?" He sounded half regretful, half glad. "I do need to tell the High Lords a few things about taxes this morning. They seem to think they can take as much from a farmer in a poor year as a good without beggaring him. And I suppose you have to get back to questioning those dark friends." He frowned. He had not said anything, but Egwene was sure he would like to keep them as far from the Black Ajah as possible. She was a little surprised he had not already tried to make the return to the tower. Perhaps he knew that she and Nynaeve would put a flea in his ear the size of a horse if he tried. "We do," she said firmly, "but not right away. Horn D. Crander Ch." The time had come to bring up her second reason for being there. But it was even more difficult than she had expected. This was going to hurt him. Those sad, wary eyes convinced her it would. But it had to be done. She snugged the scarf around her. It enveloped her from shoulders to waist. "Rand, I cannot marry you, I know," he said. She blinked. He was not taking it as hard as she expected. She told herself that was good. "I do not mean to hurt you, really, I don't. But I do not want to marry you." "I understand, Egwene. I know what I am. No woman could." "You wool-brained idiot," she snapped. "This had nothing to do with you channeling. I do not love you, at least not in the way to want to marry you." Rand's jaw dropped. "You don't love me?" He sounded as surprised as he looked. "And hurt, too. Please try to understand," she said in a gentler voice. "People change, Rand. Feelings change. When people are apart, sometimes they grow apart. I love you as I would a brother, perhaps more than a brother, but not to marry. Can you understand that?" He managed a rueful grin. "I really am a fool. I didn't really believe you might change, too. Egwene, I do not want to marry you either. I did not want to change. I didn't try to, but it happened. If you knew how much this means to me, not having to pretend, not being afraid I'll hurt you. I never wanted to do that, Egwene. Never to hurt you." She very nearly smiled. He was putting on such a brave face. He was actually quite close to convincing. "I'm glad you are taking it so well," she told him in a soft voice. "I did not want to hurt you either. And now I really must go." Rising from her chair, she bent to brush a kiss across his cheek. "You will find someone else." "Of course," he said, getting to his feet, the lie loud in his voice. "You will." She slipped out with a sense of satisfaction and hurried across the anteroom, letting Sadar go as she took the scarf from her shoulders. The thing was abominably hot. He was ready for Elaine to pick up like a lost puppy if she handled him the way they had discussed. She thought Elaine would manage him nicely now and later. For as much later as they had. Something had to be done about his control. She was willing to admit that what she had been told was right. No woman could teach him fish and birds, but that was not the same as giving up. Something had to be done, so a way had to be found. That horrible wound and the madness were problems for later, but they would be dealt with eventually. Somehow, the boil, Princes, off the stature, Everyone said Two Rivers men were stubborn, but they could not match Two Rivers women. Chapter 8. Hard Heads. Elaine was not certain Rand realized she was still in the room, the way he stared after Egwene with a half-bewildered expression. Now and again he shook his head as if arguing with himself, or trying to straighten his mind. She was content to wait him out. Anything that put off the moment a while longer. She concentrated on maintaining an outward composure, back straight and head high, hands folded in her lap, a calmness on her face that could have rivaled Moiraine's best. Butterflies, the size of hedgehogs, frolicked in her stomach. It was not fear of him channeling. She had let go of Sadar as soon as Egwene stood to leave. She wanted to trust him, and she had to. It was what she wanted to happen that had her trembling inside. She had to concentrate, not to finger her necklace or fiddle with the strand of sapphires in her hair. Was her perfume too heavy? Oh, Egwene said he liked the smell of roses. The dress. She wanted to tug it up, but he turned. The slight limp in his step tightened her lips thoughtfully, saw her sitting in her chair and gave a start, eyes widening with what seemed very close to panic. She was glad to see it. The effort of keeping her own face serene had leaped tenfold as soon as his eyes touched her. Those eyes were blue now, like a misty morning sky. He recovered on the instant and made a quite unnecessary bow, wiping his hands once nervously on his coat. "I did not realize you were still." Flushing, he cut off, forgetting her presence might be taken as an insult. "I mean, Tamp. I didn't. That is, I." He took a deep breath and began again. "I'm not as much of a fool as I sound, my lady. It isn't every day someone tells you they don't love you, my lady." She put on a tone of mock severity. "If you call me that again, I shall call you my Lord Dragon. And curtsy. Even the Queen of Andor might curtsy to you, and I am only daughter heir. Light, don't do that." He seemed uneasy out of all proportion to the threat. "I will not, Rand," she said in a more serious voice, "if you call me by my name. Elaine. Say it. Elaine." He spoke awkwardly, yet delightfully, as if he were savouring the name too. Good. It was absurd to be so pleased. All he had done was say her name after all. There was something she had to know before she could go on. "Did it hurt you very much?" That could be taken two ways, she realized. "What Egwene told you, I mean." "No." "Yes. Some." "I don't know." Fair is fair after all. His small grin took some of the edge off of his wariness. "I sound a fool again, don't I?" "No, not to me. I told her the pure truth, but I don't think she believed me. I suppose I did not want to believe it of her, either. Not really. If that isn't foolish, I don't know what is. If you tell me one more time that you are a fool, I may begin to believe it. He won't try to hold on to her. I won't have to deal with that." Her voice was calm, with a light enough tone to let him know she did not really mean what she said. "I saw a Caerhenian lord's fool, once, a man in a funny striped coat, too big for him and sewn with bells. You would look silly wearing bells." "I suppose I would," he said ruefully. "I will remember that." His slow grin was wider this time, warming his whole face. The butterfly's wings flobbed her for haste, but she occupied herself with straightening her skirts. She had to go slowly, carefully. "If I don't, he'll think I'm just a foolish girl. And he will be right." The butterflies in her belly were beating kettle drums now. "Would you like a flower?" he asked suddenly, and she blinked in confusion. "A flower, yes." Striding to the bed, he scooped up a double handful of feathers from the tattered mattress and held them out to her. "I made one for the Majhere last night. You'd have thought I'd given her the stone. But yours will be much prettier," he added hastily. "Much prettier. I promise. Rand, I will be careful. It takes only a trickle of the power. Just a thread, and I will be very careful. Trust." She had to trust him. It was a small surprise to realize that she did. "I would like that, Rand." For long moments he stared at the fluffy mound in his hands, a slow frown on his face. Abruptly he let the feathers fall, dusting his hands. "Flowers," he said. "That's no fit gift for you." Her heart went out to him. Clearly he had tried to embrace Sedin and failed. Masking disappointment in action, he limped hurriedly to the metallic cloth and began gathering it over his arm. "Now this is a proper gift for the daughter heir of Amdor. You could have a seamstress make." He floundered over what a seamstress might make from a 4-pace length of gold and silver cloth, less than 2 feet wide. "I'm sure a seamstress will have many ideas," she told him diplomatically. Pulling a handkerchief from her sleeve, she knelt for a moment to collect the feathers he had dropped into the square of pale blue silk. "The maids will take care of that," he said, as she tucked the small bundle securely into her belt pouch. Well, this bit is done. How could he understand that she would keep the feathers because he had wanted them to be a flower? He shifted his feet, holding the glittering folds as if he did not know what to do with them. "The Marshari must have seamstresses," she told him. "I will give that to one of them." He brightened, smiling. She saw no reason to tell him she meant it as a gift. Those thundering butterflies would not let her hold back any longer. "Rand, do you? Ch. Like me? Like you?" He frowned. "Of course I like you. I like you very much." Did he have to look as if he did not understand at all? "I am fond of you, Rand." She was startled that she said it so calmly. Her stomach seemed to be trying to writhe up into her throat, and her hands and feet felt like ice. More than fond. That was enough. She was not going to make a fool of herself. He has to say more than like first. She almost giggled hysterically. "I will keep control of myself. I will not let him see me behave like a moon-eyed girl. I will not." "I'm fond of you," he said slowly. "I'm not usually so forward." No, that might make him think of Berylane. There was red in his cheeks. He was thinking of Berylane. "Janim." Her voice came as smooth as silk. "Soon I will have to go, Rand. To leave Tyr. I may not see you again for months. Or ever." A tiny voice cried in her head. She refused to listen. "I could not go without letting you know how I feel. And I am very fond of you. Elaine, I am fond of you. I feel I want The scarlet spots on his cheeks grew. "Elaine, I don't know what to say, how to Suddenly, it was her face that was flaming. He must think she was trying to force him into saying more. "Aren't you?" The small voice mocked, which only made her cheeks hotter. "Rand, I'm not asking for light. How to say it? And mos presto. I only wanted you to know how I feel. That is all." Berylane would not have let it go at that. Berylane would have been wrapped around him by now. Telling herself she would not let that half-dress snip better her, she moved closer to him, took the glittering cloth from his arm, and dropped it on the carpet. For some reason he seemed taller than he ever had before. "Juan, Rand, I want you to kiss me." There. It was out. "Kiss you," he said, as if he had never heard of kissing before. "Elaine, I don't want to promise more than I mean, it isn't as if we were betrothed. Not that I'm suggesting we should be. It's just that. I am fond of you, Elaine. More than fond. I just do not want you to think I. She had to laugh at him with all his confused earnestness. "I do not know how things are done in the Two Rivers, but in Camelin you don't wait until you are betrothed before kissing a girl. And it does not mean you must become betrothed either. But perhaps you do not know how." His arms went around her almost roughly, and his lips came down on hers. Her head spun, her toes tried to curl up in her slippers. Some time later, she was not certain how long, she realized she was leaning against his chest, knees trembling, trying to gulp air. "Forgive me for interrupting you," he said. She was glad to hear a touch of breathlessness in his voice. "I am just a backward shepherd from the Two Rivers. You are uncouth," she murmured against his shirt, "and you did not shave this morning, but I would not say you are backward." "Elaine, She put a hand over his mouth. "I do not want to hear anything from you that you do not mean with your whole heart," she said firmly. "Not now or ever." He nodded, not as if he understood why, but at least as if he understood that she meant what she said. Straightening her hair, the strand of sapphires was tangled beyond mending without a mirror. She stepped out of his encircling arms, not without reluctance. It would be all too easy to remain there, and she had already been more forward than she had ever dreamed of before. Speaking up like that, asking for a kiss. Asking. She was not Berylane. Perhaps Min had had a viewing. What Min saw happened, but she would not share him with Berylane. Perhaps she needed to do a bit more plain speaking. Obliquely plain, at least. "I expect you will not lack for company after I go." Just remember that some women see a man with their hearts, while others see no more than a bauble to wear, no different than a necklace or a bracelet. Remember that I will come back, and I am one who sees with her heart." He looked confused at first, then a little alarmed. She had said too much, too fast. She had to divert him. "Do you know what you have not said to me? You have not tried to frighten me away by telling me how dangerous you are. Don't try now. It is too late. I did not think of it." Another thought came to him, though, and his eyes crinkled with suspicion. "Did you and egwene scheme this up between you?" She managed to combine wide-eyed innocence with mild outrage. "How could you even consider such a thing? Do you imagine we would hand you around between us like a package? You think a good deal of yourself. There is such a thing as being overproud." He did look confused now. "Quite satisfactory. Are you sorry for what you did to us, Rand?" "I did not mean to frighten you," he said hesitantly. "Egwene made me angry. She's always been able to, without half trying." "That's no excuse, I know. I said I was sorry, and I am. Look what it got me. Burned tables and another mattress ruined. And for the pinch." His face reddened again, but he faced her firmly even so. "Ooh, no. No, I am not sorry for that. The two of you talking over my head, as if I were a lump of wood with no ears. You deserved as much, both of you, and I won't say different." For a moment she considered him. He rubbed his arms through his coat sleeves as she momentarily embraced Cedar. She did not know healing to any degree, but she had learned bits and pieces on the edge of it. Channeling, she soothed away the hurt she had given him for the pinch. His eyes widened in surprise, and he shifted on his feet as if testing the absence of pain. "For being honest," she told him simply. There was a rap at the door, and Gaul looked in. At first the aielman had his head down, but after a quick glance at them he raised it. Colour flooded Elaine's face, as she realized he had suspected that he might be interrupting something he should not see. She very nearly embraced Cedar again and taught him a lesson. "The Tyrens are here," Gaul said. "The High Lords you were expecting." "I will go then," she told Rand. "You must tell them about taxes, was it not? Think on what I have said." She did not say, "Think of me," but she was sure the effect would be the same. He reached out as if to stop her, but she slipped away from him. She had no intention of putting on a display in front of Gaul. The man was Aiel. But what must he think of her, wearing perfume and sapphires at that hour of the morning? It required real effort not to pull the neckline of her dress up higher. The High Lords entered as she reached the door, a cluster of greying men in pointed beards and colourful ornate coats with puffy sleeves. They crowded out of her way with reluctant bows, their bland faces and polite murmurs not hiding their relief that she was leaving. She glanced back once from the doorway. A tall, broad-shouldered young man in a plain green coat among the High Lords in their silks and satin stripes, Rand looked like a stork among peacocks, yet there was something about him, a presence that said he commanded there by right. The Tyrens recognized it, bending their stiff necks reluctantly. He thought probably they bowed just because he was the dragon reborn, and perhaps they thought so too. But she had seen men, like Gareth Bryan, the captain-commander of her mother's guards, who could have dominated a room in rags, with no title and no one knowing their name. Rand might not know it, but he was such a man. He had not been when she first saw him, but he was now. She pulled the door shut behind her. The aiel around the entrance glanced at her, and the captain commanding the ring of defenders in the middle of the anteroom stared uneasily, but she barely noticed them. It was done. Or at least it was begun. 4 days she had before Joya and Amico were put on that ship. 4 days at most to twine herself so firmly into Rand's thoughts that he had no room for Berylane. Or if not that, firmly enough that she stayed inside his head until she had the chance to do more. She had never thought she might do a thing like this, stalk a man like a huntress stalking a wild boar. The butterflies were still gambolling in her stomach. At least she had not let him see how nervous she was, and it occurred to her that she had not once thought of what her mother would say. With that, the flutterings vanished. She did not care what her mother said. Morghese had to accept her daughter as a woman. That was all there was to it. The aiel bowed as she moved away, and she acknowledged them with a gracious nod that would have done Morghese proud. Even the Tyren captain looked at her as if he could see her new serenity. She did not think she would be troubled by butterflies again. For the black ajah perhaps, but not for Rand. Ignoring the High Lords in their anxious semicircle, Rand watched the door close behind Elaine with wonder in his eyes. Dreams coming true, even only this much, made him uneasy. A swim in the waterwood was one thing, but he would never have believed a dream where she came to him like this. She had been so cool and collected while he was tripping over his own tongue, and Egwene giving his own thoughts back to him and only concerned she might hurt him. Why was it women could go to pieces or fly into a rage at the smallest thing, yet never flicker an eyelash at what left you gaping? "My Lord Dragon?" Sunaman murmured, even more diffidently than usual. Word of this morning must have spread through the stone already. That first lot had nearly run on their way out, and it was doubtful Torian would show his face, or his filthy suggestions, anywhere Rand was. Sunaman essayed an ingratiating smile, then smothered it, dry-washing his plump hands, when Rand only looked at him. The rest pretended they did not see the burned tables, or the shattered mattress and scattered books, or the half-melted lumps over the fireplace that had been the stag and wolves. High Lords were good at seeing only what they wanted to see. Carleon and Tedosian, false self-effacement in every line of their thick bodies, surely never realized there was anything suspicious in never looking at one another. But then, Rand might never have noticed if not for Tom's note, found in the pocket of a coat just back from being brushed. "The Lord Dragon wished to see us," Sunaman managed. Could Egwene and Elaine have worked it up between them? Of course not. Women did not do things like that any more than men. Did they? It had to be coincidence. Elaine heard that he was free, and decided to speak. That was it. That was it. Taxes, he barked. The Tyrens did not move, but they gave the impression of stepping back. How he hated dealing with these men, he wanted to dive back into the books. "It is a bad precedent, my Lord Dragon, lowering taxes," a lean, grey-haired man said in an oily voice. Melan was tall for a Tyren, only a hand shorter than Rand, and hard as any defender. He held himself in a stoop in Rand's presence. His dark eyes showed how he hated it. But he had hated it when Rand told them to stop crouching around him too. None of them straightened, but Melan especially had not liked being reminded of what he did. The peasants have always paid easily, but if we lower their taxes when the day comes that we raise them back to where they now are, the fools will complain as bitterly as if we had doubled the present levy. There might well be riots when that day comes, my Lord Dragon. Rand strode across the room to stand before Callandor. The crystal sword glittered, outshining the gilt and gemstones surrounding it. A reminder of who he was, of the power he could wield. All, Egwene. It was foolish to feel hurt, because she said she no longer loved him. Why should he expect her to have feelings for him that he did not have for her? Yet it did hurt. A relief, but not a pleasant one. You will have riots if you drive men off their farms. 3 books stood in a stack, almost by Melan's feet. The Treasures of the Stone of Tyr, Travels in the Waste, and Dealings with the Territory of Moiraine. The keys lay in those, and in the various translations of the Kara Ethan cycle, if he could only find them and fit them to the proper locks. He pushed his mind back to the High Lords. Do you think they will watch their families starve and do nothing? The defenders of the stone who put down riots before, my Lord Dragon, Sunaman said soothingly. Our own guards can keep peace in the countryside. The peasants will not disturb you, I give you my assurance. There are too many farmers as it is. Carleon flinched at Rand's glare. It is the civil war in Caerhien, my Lord Dragon, he explained hurriedly. The Caerhienin can buy no grain, and the granaries are bursting. This year's harvest will go to waste as it is, and next year, spice. Burn my soul, my Lord Dragon, but what we need is for some of those peasants to stop their eternal digging and planting. He seemed to realize he had said too much, though he clearly did not understand why. Rand wondered whether he had any idea how food got to his table. Did he see anything but gold and power? What will you do when Caerhien is buying grain again? Rand said coolly. For that matter, is Caerhien the only land that needs grain? Why had Elaine spoken up like that? What did she expect of him? Fond, she said. Women could play games with words like Aes Sedai. Did she mean she loved him? No, that was plain foolishness. Overproud to a degree. My Lord Dragon, Milan said, half subservient, half as if explaining something to a child. If the civil wars stopped today, Caheen still could not buy more than a few barge loads for 2, even 3 years. We have always sold our grain to Caheen, always, for the 20 years since the Aiel War. They were so bound up in what they had always done that they could not see what was so simple, or would not see it. When the cabbages sprouted like weeds around Emmons Field, it was a near certainty that bad rain or whiteworm had struck Devon Ride or Watch Hill. When Watch Hill had too many turnips, Emmons Field would have a shortage, or Devon Ride. Offer it in Ilion, he told them. What did Elaine expect? Or Altara? He did like her, but he liked Min as much, or thought he did. It was impossible to sort out his feelings for either of them. You have ships for the sea, as well as riverboats and barges, and if you don't have enough, hire them from Moiraine. He liked both women, but beyond that, he had spent very nearly his whole life mooning after Egwene. He was not about to dive into that again until he was sure of something. Or, if dealings with the territory of Moiraine was to be believed. Stop this, he told himself. Keep your mind on these weasels, or they'll find cracks to slip through and bite you on the way. Pay with grain. I'm sure the first will be amenable for a good price, and maybe a signed agreement, a treaty. That was a good word, the sort they used. I am pledging to leave Moiraine alone in return for ships. He owed her that. We trade little with Ilion, my Lord Dragon. They are vultures and scum. Tudosian sounded scandalized, and so did Milan when he said, We have always dealt with Moiraine from strength, my Lord Dragon. Never with bent knee. Rand took a deep breath. The High Lords tensed. It always came to this. He always tried to reason with them, and it always failed. Tom said the High Lords had heads as hard as the stone, and he was right. What do I feel for her? Dreaming about her. She's certainly pretty. He was not sure if he meant Elaine or Min. Stop this. A kiss means no more than a kiss. Stop it. Putting women firmly out of his head, he set himself to telling these stone-brained fools what they were going to do. First, you will cut taxes on farmers by 3/4 and on everyone else by half. Don't argue. Just do it. Second, you go to Berylane and ask her price for hiring. The High Lords listened with false smiles and grinding teeth, but they listened. Egwene was considering Joya and Amiko when Matt fell in beside her, just walking down the hallway as if he merely happened to be going the same way. He was frowning to himself, and his hair needed brushing, as if he had been scrubbing his fingers through it. Once or twice he glanced at her, but did not speak. The servants they passed bowed or curtsied, and so did the occasional High Lords and ladies, if with markedly less enthusiasm. Matt's lip-curling stares at the nobles would have brought trouble if she had not been there, friend of the Lord, dragon or not. This silence was not like him, not like the Matt she knew. Except for his fine red coat wrinkled as if he had slept in it, he seemed no different than the old Matt, yet they were surely all different now. His quiet was unsettling. "Is last night troubling you?" she asked at last. He missed a step. "You know about that." "Well, you would, wouldn't you? Doesn't bother me. Wasn't much to it. Over and done with now, anyway." She pretended to believe him. "Nynaeve and I do not see much of you." That was a rank understatement. "I have been busy," he muttered, with an uncomfortable shrug, looking everywhere but at her again. "Dicing?" she asked dismissively. "Cards." A plump maid, curtsying with her arms full of folded towels, glanced at egwene and, apparently thinking she was not looking, winked at Matt. He grinned at her. "I'd been busy playing cards." Egwene's eyebrows rose sharply. That woman had to be 10 years older than Nynaeve. "I see. It must use up a great deal of time, playing cards. Too much to spare a few moments for old friends." "The last time I spared you a moment, you and Nynaeve tied me up with the power like a pig for market, so you could rummage through my room." "Friends don't steal from friends," he grimaced. "Besides, you're always with that Elaine, with her nose in the air. Or Moiraine. I do not like." Clearing his throat, he shot her a sideways glance. "I don't like taking up your time. You are busy, from what I hear. Questioning dark friends. Doing all sorts of important things, I should imagine. You know these Tyrens think you are Aes Sedai, don't you?" She shook her head ruefully. It was Aes Sedai he did not like. However much of the world Matt saw, nothing would ever change him. It is not stealing to take back what was supposed to be a loan, she told him. I don't remember you saying anything about a loan. Ah, what use do I have for a letter from the amyrlin? Just get me in trouble. You could have asked, though. She refrained from pointing out that they had asked. She wanted neither an argument nor a sulky departure. He would not call it that, of course. This time she would let him get away with his version. Well, I am glad you are still willing to talk to me. Was there a special reason for it today? He shoved his fingers through his hair and muttered to himself. What he needed was his mother to haul him off by his ear for a long talking to. Egwene counselled herself to patience. She could be patient when she wanted to. She would not say a word before he did, if she burst for it. The corridor opened into a railed colonnade of white marble, looking down on one of the stone's few gardens. Large white blossoms covered a few small, waxy-leafed trees and gave a scent even sweeter than the banks of red and yellow roses. A sullen breeze failed to stir the hangings on the inner wall, but it did cut the morning's growing damp warmth. Matt took a seat on the wide balustrade with his back against a column and 1 foot up in front of him. Peering down into the garden, he finally said, I need some advice. He wanted advice from her. She goggled at him. Whatever I can do to help, she said faintly. He turned his head to her, and she did her best to assume something like Aes Sedai calm. What do you want advice about? I don't know. It was a 10-pace drop to the garden. Besides, there were men down there weeding among the roses. If she pushed him over, he might land on one. A gardener, not a rosebush. How am I supposed to advise you, then? She asked in a thin voice. I am trying to decide what to do. He looked embarrassed. He had a right to, in her opinion. I hope you are not thinking of trying to leave. You know how important you are. You cannot run away from it, Matt. You think I don't know that. I don't think I could leave if Moiraine told me I could. Believe me, Egwene, I'm not going anywhere. I just want to know what's going to happen. He gave a rough shake of his head, and his voice grew tighter. What comes next? What's in these holes in my memory? There are chunks of my life that aren't even there. They don't exist, as if they never happened. Why do I find myself spouting gibberish? People say it's the old tongue, but it's goose gabble to me. I want to know, Egwene. I have to know before I go as crazy as Rand. Rand is not crazy, she said automatically. So Matt was not trying to run away. That was a pleasant surprise. He had not seemed to believe in responsibility, but there was pain and worry in his voice. Matt never worried, or never let anyone see it, if he did. I do not know the answers, Matt, she said gently. Perhaps Moiraine. No, he was on his feet in a bound. Or Aes Sedai. I mean, You're different. I know you, and you aren't. Didn't they teach you anything in the tower? Some trick or other, something that would serve? Oh, Matt, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His laugh reminded her of their childhood. Just so he had always laughed, when his grandest expectations went astray. Ah, well, I guess it does not matter. It'd still be the tower, if at second hand. No offence to you. Just so he had moaned over a splinter in his finger and treated a broken leg as if it were nothing at all. There might be a way, she said slowly. If Moiraine says it is all right, she might. Moiraine! Haven't you heard a word? I said. The last thing I want is Moiraine meddling. What way? Matt had always been rash, but he wanted no more than she did to know. If only he showed a little sense and caution for once. A passing Tyrene noblewoman with dark braids coiled about her head, shoulders bare above yellow linen, bent her knee slightly, looking at them with no expression. She walked on quickly, with a stiff back. Egwene watched her until she was well beyond earshot, and they were alone. Unless the gardeners, 30 feet below, counted. Matt was staring at her expectantly. In the end, she told him of the ter'angreal, the twisted doorway that held answers on its other side. It was the dangers she emphasized, the consequences of foolish questions, or those touching the shadow, the dangers even Aes Sedai might not know. She was more than flattered that he had come to her, but he had to show a little sense. You must remember this, Matt. Frivolous questions can get you killed, so if you do use it, you will have to be serious for a change. And you mustn't ask any questions that touch the shadow. He had listened with greater and greater incredulity. When she was dumb, he exclaimed, "3 questions? You go in like Billy, I suppose, spend a night and come out 10 years later with a purse that's always full of gold and For once in your life, Maxim Cauthon," she snapped, "do not talk like a fool. You know very well tarmongaidon are not stories. It's the dangers you have to be aware of. Maybe the answers you seek are inside this one, but you must not try it before Moiraine says you can. You must promise me that, or I promise you, I will take you to her like a trout on a string." "You know I can." He gave a loud snort. "I'd be a fool if I did try it, no matter what Moiraine says. Walk into a bloody tarmongaidon. It's less I want to do with the bloody power, not more. You can blot it right out of your mind. It is the only chance I know, Matt." "Not for me, it isn't," he said firmly. "No chance at all is better than that." Despite his tone, she wanted to put an arm around him. Only he would likely make some joke at her expense and try to goose her. He had been incorrigible from the day he was born, but he had come to her for help. "I'm sorry, Matt. What will you do? Oh, play cards, I suppose. If anyone will play with me, play stones with Tom. Dice in the taverns. I can still go as far as the city, at least." His gaze strayed toward a passing maidservant, a slender, dark-eyed girl near his own age. "I'll find something to take up time." Her hand itched to slap him, but instead she said cautiously, "Matt, you really aren't thinking of leaving, are you? Would you tell Moiraine if I was?" He put up his hands to forestall her. "Well, there's no need. I told you I wouldn't. I'll not pretend I'd not like to, but I won't. Is that good enough for you?" A pensive frown crept onto his face. "Egwene, do you ever wish you were back home?" That none of this had ever happened. It was a startling question coming from him, but she knew her answer. "Ooh, no. Even with everything, no." "Do you? I would be a fool then, wouldn't I?" He laughed. "It's cities I like, and this one will do for now. This one will do. Egwene, you won't tell Moiraine about this, will you?" "About me asking for advice and all? Why shouldn't I?" she asked suspiciously. He was Matt, after all. He gave an embarrassed hitch of his shoulders. "I've been keeping wider of her than I have of... Anyway, I've been staying clear, especially when she wants to root around in my head. She might think I'm weakening. You won't tell her, will you?" "I won't," she said, "if you promise me you will not go near that tarmongaidon without asking her permission. I shouldn't even have told you about it. I promise." He grinned. "I won't go near that thing unless my life depends on it. I swear," he finished with mock solemnity. Egwene shook her head. However much everything else changed, Matt just never would. Chapter 9. Decisions. 3 days passed with heat and damp that seemed to sap even the Tyrants' strength. The city slowed to a lethargic walk, the stone to a crawl. Servants were nearly in their sleep. The Majhere tore her coiled braids in frustration, but even she could not find the energy to rat knuckles or flick ears with a hard finger. Defenders of the stone slumped at their posts like half-melted candles, and the officers showed more interest in chilled wine than in making their rounds. The High Lords kept largely to their apartments, sleeping through the hottest part of the day, and a few left the stone entirely for the relative cool of estates far to the east, on the slopes of the spine of the world. Oddly, only the Outlanders, who felt the heat worst of all, pushed on with their lives as hard as ever, if not harder. For them, the heavy heat did not weigh nearly as much as did the hours rushing by. Matt quickly discovered that he had been right about the young lords who saw the playing cards try to kill him. Not only did they avoid him, they spread the word among their friends, often garbled. No one in the stone who had 2 pieces of silver in hand would say more than hasty excuses while backing away. The rumours spread beyond the lordlings. More than one serving woman who had enjoyed a cuddle now declined too, and 2 said uneasily that they had heard it was dangerous to be alone with him. Perrin appeared all wrapped up in his own worries, and Tom seemed to vanish by sleight of hand. Matt had no idea what occupied the leman, but he was seldom to be found, day or night. Moiraine, the one person Matt wished would ignore him, instead seemed to be there whenever he turned around. She was just passing by, or crossing the corridor in the distance, but her eyes met his every last time, looking as if she knew what he was thinking and what he wanted, knew how she was going to make him do exactly what she wanted instead. None of it made any difference in one respect. he still managed to find excuses to put off leaving for another day. As he saw it, he had not promised Egwene he would stay, but he did. Once he carried a lamp down into the belly of the stone, to the so-called Great Holding, as far as the dry, rotted door at the far end of the narrow hallway. A few minutes of peering into the shadowy interior at dim shapes covered with dusty canvas, roughly stacked crates and barrels, their flat ends used as shelves for jumbles of figurines and carvings and peculiar things of crystal and glass and metal. A few minutes of that, and he hurried away, muttering, "I'd have to be the biggest bloody fool in the whole bloody world." Nothing kept him from going into the city, though, and there was no chance at all of meeting Moiraine in the dockside taverns of the Mall, the port district, or the inns in the Charm, where the warehouses were, dimly lit, cramped, often dirty places of cheap wine, bad ale, occasional fight. The stakes in the dice games were small compared to what he had grown used to, but that was not why he always found himself back in the stone after a few hours. He tried not to think about what always drew him back, near to Rand. Perrin sometimes saw Matt in the waterfront taverns, drinking too much cheap wine, dicing as if he did not care whether he won or lost, once flashing a knife when a burly shipman pressed him on how often he did win. It was not like Matt to be so irritable, but Perrin avoided him instead of trying to find out what was troubling him. Perrin was not there for wine or dice, and the men who thought of fighting changed their minds after a good look at his shoulders and his eyes. He bought bad ale, though, for sailors in wide leather trousers and for under-merchants with thin silver chains across their coat fronts, for any man who looked to be from a distant land. It was rumour he hunted, word of something that might draw Fail away from Tyr, away from him. He was sure if he found an adventure for her, something that smacked of a chance at putting her name in the stories, she would go. She pretended to understand why he had to stay, but occasionally she still hinted that she wanted to leave and hoped he would go with her. He was certain the right bait would pull her, without him. Most rumours she would know for outdated twistings of the truth, just as he did. The war that burned along the Arith Ocean was said to be the work of a people no one had ever heard of before, called the Sorcery, or something like it. He heard many variations from many tellers. A strange folk who might be Arthur Hawkwing's armies come back after 1,000 years. One fellow, a tarabona in a round red hat and a moustache as thick as a bull's horns, solemnly informed him that Hawkwing himself led these people, his legendary sword Justice in hand. There were rumours that the fabled Horn of Valere, meant to call dead heroes from the grave to fight in the last battle, had been found. In Ghealdan, riots had broken out all over the country. Ilion was suffering from outbreaks of mass madness. In Cairhien, famine was slowing the killing. Someplace in the borderlands, Trolloc raids were on the increase. Perrin could not send Fail into any of that, not even to get her away from Tyr. Reports of trouble in Saldea seemed promising. Her own home must be attractive to her, and he had heard that Mazrim Taim, the false dragon, was safely in Aes Sedai hands. But no one knew what sort of trouble. Making something up would do no good. Whatever he found, she would surely ask her own questions before chasing after it. Besides, any turmoil in Saldea might easily be as bad as the other things he heard. He could not tell her where he was spending his time either, because she would inevitably ask why. She knew he was not Matt to enjoy lolling about taverns. He had never been good at lying, so he put her off as best he could, and she began to give him long, silent, slanted looks. All he could do was redouble his efforts to find a tale to lure her away. He had to send her away from him before he got her killed. He had to. Egwene and Nynaeve spent more hours with Joya and Amico to no avail. Their stories never wavered. Over Nynaeve's protests, egwene even tried telling each of them what the other had said to see if anything joggled loose. Amico stared at them, whining that she had never heard any such plan. But it might be true, she added. It might. She sweated with eagerness to please. Joya coolly told them to go to Tanchico if they wished. "It is an uncomfortable city now, I hear," she said smoothly, raven eyes glittering. "The king holds little more than the city itself, and I understand the Panarch has ceased keeping civil order. Strong arms and quick knives rule Tanchico. But go if it pleases you." No word came from Tar Valon, nothing to say if the amyrlin was dealing with the possible threat to free Mazrim Taim. There had been plenty of time for a message to come by quick riverboat or a man changing horses, since Moiraine had sent the pigeons, provided she had sent them. Egwene and Nynaeve argued about that. Nynaeve admitted the Aes Sedai could not lie, but she tried to find some twist in Moiraine's words. Moiraine did not seem to fret over the lack of response from the amyrlin, though it was hard to tell through her crystal calm. Egwene did fret over it, and over whether Tanchico was a false trail, or a real one, or a trap. The stone's library held books about Tarabon and Tanchico, but though she read until her eyes ached, she found no clue to anything dangerous to Rand. Heat and worry did nothing for her temper. She was sometimes as snappish as Nynaeve. Some things were going well, of course. Matt was still in the stone. Obviously, he really was growing up and learning about responsibility. She regretted failing him, but she was not certain any woman in the tower could have done more. She understood his thirst to know, because she thirsted too, although for other knowledge, for the things she could only learn in the tower, the things she might discover that no one else had known how to do before, the lost things she might relearn. Aviendha began to visit with Egwene, apparently of her own choice. If the woman was wary at first, well, she was aiel after all, and she did think Egwene was full Aes Sedai. Still, her company was enjoyable, although Egwene sometimes thought she saw unasked questions in her eyes. If Aviendha kept her reserve, it soon became apparent that she had a quick wit and a sense of humour akin to Egwene's. They sometimes ended up giggling together like girls. Aiel ways were nothing Egwene was used to, though, such as Aviendha's discomfort at sitting in a chair, and her shock at finding Egwene in her bath, a silver-plated tub the Mahere had brought up. Not shock at walking in on her naked, in fact. When she saw that Egwene was uncomfortable, she peeled off her own clothes and sat down on the floor to talk. But at seeing Egwene sitting chest-deep in water, it was dirtying so much water that made her eyes pop. For another thing, Aviendha refused to understand why she and Elaine had not done something drastic to Berelain, since they wanted her out of the way. It was all but forbidden for a warrior to kill a woman not wed to the spear. But since neither Elaine nor Berelain were maidens of the spear, it was apparently quite all right in Aviendha's view for Elaine to challenge the first of Myene to fight with knives, or failing that with fists and feet. Knives were best, as she saw it. Berelain looked the sort of woman who could be beaten several times without giving up. Best simply to challenge and kill her. Or Egwene could do it for her, as friend and near sister. Even with that, it was a pleasure to have someone to talk and laugh with. Elaine was occupied most of the time, of course, and Nynaeve, seeming to feel the rush of time as keenly as Egwene, gave her free moments over to moonlit walks on the battlements with Lan, and to preparing foods the warder liked with her own hands, not to mention curses that sometimes drove the cooks from the kitchen. Nynaeve did not know very much about cooking. If not for Aviendha, Egwene was not sure what she would have done in the muggy hours between questionings of the Dark Friends, sweated, undoubtedly, and worried that she might have to do something that gave her nightmares thinking of it. By agreement, Elaine was never present at those questionings. One more set of ears listening would make no difference. Instead, whenever Rand had a moment to spare, the daughter heir just happened to be close by, to talk or simply walk holding his arm, even if it was only from a meeting with some high lords to a room where others waited, or to a lightning inspection of the defenders' quarters. She became quite good at finding secluded corners where the two of them could pause, alone. Of course, he always had Aiel trailing after him, but she soon cared as little for what they thought as for what her mother would. She even entered a sort of conspiracy with the Maidens of the Spear. They seemed to know every hidden nook in the stone, and they let her know whenever Rand was alone. They seemed to think the game great sport. The surprise was that he asked her about the governing of nations, and listened to what she said. That she wished her mother could see. More than once Morghese had laughed, half despairingly, and told her she had to learn to concentrate. Which crafts to protect, and how, and which not, and why, might be dry decisions, but as important as how to care for the sick. It might be fun to guide a stubborn lord or merchant into doing what he did not want to while thinking it was his own idea. It might be warming to feed the hungry, but if the hungry were to be fed, it was necessary to decide how many clerks and drivers and wagons were needed. Others might arrange it, but then you would never know until it was too late whether they had made a mistake. He listened to her and often took her advice. She thought she could have loved him for those two things alone. Berylin was not setting foot outside her chambers. Rand had begun smiling as soon as he saw her. Nothing could be finer about the world. Unless the days could stop passing. 3 short days, slipping away like water through her fingers. Joya and Amico would be sent north, and the reason for staying in Tyr would vanish. It would be time for her and Egwene and Nynaeve to leave too. She would go when